Welcome to this edition of Healthy Living. I'm your host, Tim Kelley. On today's program, we're going to be talking about a very unique event coming to the city of Suffolk on March the 15th. It's a community hands-only CPR and health fair. And to talk to us about this event, as well as kind of talk a little bit about CPR, and it's maybe not the same old CPR that you're used to with regard to some of the training mechanisms and things that are provided and will be offered at the event on the 15th. We have Steve Traverso, who is the Community CPR Manager with the American Heart Association, and Jim Steil, who is the Western Tidewater Medical Reserve Corps Coordinator. Thank you, gentlemen, both for being with us today.
Thank you.
Jim, we'll start talking a little bit about the event itself, laying out some of the basics about what's going to be going on and maybe where the impetus behind this event came from.
Okay, thanks. Well, how this all started was, believe it or not, from a phone call from Steve. And it was one of those cold calls that you're really not sure who's calling you or why they're calling you, but the offer was, would you like something free?
It's always a good start, right?
It is, and it got my attention, but then when Steve started talking about hands-only CPR, it started to resonate a lot closer to home. And the reason it did was we had just completed some discussions with the Isle of Wight school system where they were bringing hands-only CPR and basic first aid into the school system for all students, and that complies with the governor's proclamation to get students trained and familiar with CPR. Part of this is that we have a large capability, but our response isn't always what it needs to be. Now, 911 dispatchers, law enforcement, first responders, fire, rescue, EMS, they're all there and they're available. But getting to us is sometimes the problem. We know simply in our health district area, because we're such a diverse agricultural dispense, we're spread out from North Carolina border to the James River. And we've got well, not quite the James River, but close. We can see it from here.
Right.
We've got a huge population over a large landmass, and we can't always have 911 response as our only mechanism to respond.
Right.
So we wanted to take this capability, this hands-only CPR, and bring it to the community. We wanted to mesh it up with more than just that event, and we wanted to tie it with some organizations that have good, sound, good information to pass on to our community citizens. So we invited, working with Steve, we invited the Eastern Virginia Medical School, we invited Virginia 211, FAMOUS, the Lyme Disease Association, Healthy People, Healthy Suffolk, and the American Diabetes Association to partner with us on March 15th here at the Health Department building located at 135 Hall Avenue in downtown Suffolk. So we're going to have those organizations along with the American Heart Association bringing together a community event that touches more than just health. We're talking a lot about information that can help pretty much anybody, and you don't have to be afflicted by something to participate in this. All you need to be is a concerned citizen who wants to be a resource to help others.
Well, that's a pretty basic goal and a great opportunity for our public to get out there, get some great information, and obviously get some training on the hands-only CPR. Now, Steve, let's talk a little bit about what we have in front of us, and these two mannequins right here are going to play a big part in what opportunities will be provided on the 15th. But if you could set it up by talking about really the percentages, and sometimes I think this number will be revealing to a lot of people as far as the heart disease related illnesses or deaths, I should say, really in the city of Suffolk. What is that percentage, and kind of talk a little bit about how that number is comprised?
Absolutely. So in Suffolk, in the city of Suffolk, 21% of all deaths in 2012 were caused by heart disease. That is a huge number, and it's the #1 cause of death in the United States for a reason. The truth is, it's 80% preventable. And at the Heart Association, we have a number of programs that focus on those forward-thinking, healthy eating, change your habits for the future. But the truth is, we also need to have a dual-pronged strategy and really focus on response to the cardiac emergencies that are happening right now. And with an area like Suffolk, which is typical of Virginia, which is about 21 or 22% of all deaths are caused by heart disease, you know, we really have an opportunity to change that and to increase the response. When it comes to sudden cardiac arrest, there are over 400,000 sudden cardiac arrests in the United States each year. and there are less than 11% of people survive. I mean, that's a terrible number. And when you look at certain cities like Boston or Seattle, they've achieved survival over 50% of their victims.
Okay.
That's not a difference of 1 or 2. That is a massive difference.
Right.
And the reason for that is a massive hands-only CPR education campaign that has gone on for years.
Right.
We've taken that kind of similar model and said, how can we change this across the country? How can we save lives everywhere? And we've taken that large idea and we're trying to bring it to everywhere, small or large. And so we've come here to Suffolk to have the opportunity to bring a similar training so that we can bring that knowledge exponentially to the community
Right.
and save lives right here in Virginia.
Now, Jim, you talked about that as far as, certainly our 911 responders and the people that are showing up when we make that call and have that incident are so important. But again, anything that can be done between the time of the call or pre-call and the time of their arrival can certainly play a huge difference in the outcome of what that incident may turn out to be. And of course, again, we have the mannequins here, and we'll talk a little bit about their role here. But just talk about how important CPR, and really let's talk about how, I use the word easy, it is, and I mentioned it off the top that it has changed. It's been about 30 years since I'd gone through some kind of CPR training, and when I had the opportunity to go through some of the basic training and the opportunities and the tools that are here, I use the phrase very loosely, it seemed like it's gotten a little easier.
Yeah.
And it's a lot more simplistic with regard to what you need to focus on and what you need to do. But again, the impact, something that to some may seem simple, is huge.
Absolutely. When a cardiac arrest is when your heart stops or just sort of quivers.
Right.
And that, simply put, is dying. And if no one does anything, they are going to die. In fact, there's a statistic that says for every minute that passes that someone is in cardiac arrest where they are not receiving bystander CPR, their chance of survival decreases by 7 to 10% for every minute that passes, which means even in a best case scenario, when EMS is on site 5 minutes after a 911 call, it's still a coin flip if that person has a chance to live. And frankly, that's too low for me when we have an action that's as simple as CPR that we can do.
Right.
So it's a massive difference that we can make just by performing a few simple steps. The tools that we have in front of us are one of the tools that the American Heart Association has built to help convey that information and to train the community. We have here the part of the CPR Anytime kit, which is manufactured by Laerdal and produced by the American Heart Association. Inside the kit, we've got both a mannequin and Annie. All CPR mannequins are named Annie, as well as a DVD.
Okay.
On the DVD, it includes instructions for hands-only CPR, CPR for children, how to use an AED, as well as choking relief for adults and children. Now, those 5 lessons you mentioned before, typically in a certification class where you receive a card, would take 3.5 to 4 hours to learn. This tool, the CPR Anytime Kit, has boiled that essential information down to only 22 minutes. So in a 30-minute session at our event, you're going to have the opportunity to learn hands-only CPR for adults, as well as gather information from a number of partners and group organizations, and potentially impact the survival of your loved ones and your family members. There's a statistic that I didn't touch on. About 80% of out-of-hospital cardiac arrests happen in the home. So our goal is to get as much information into everyone's home as we can. We'd love to have someone in every house take one of these home. Right now, we've got an opportunity to distribute a number of them and train a lot of people. So we hope that folks from Suffolk will join us and have the opportunity to learn.
And talk about the exponential nature of what you're trying to achieve. And Jim, maybe you could step in on this one. At the event, these kits are going to be available for those who and of course, it's first come, first serve, I would presume. But it's not just getting the kit in the hands of one person. It's the fact that we're looking to have, and I forget exactly the term of how you're phrasing it, but have the one person train 5.
Right.
So if you could talk a little bit about how that's going to work and really the philosophy behind that.
Right. There's a teach one, train one, do one, watch one kind of concept that works extremely well. Through the courtesy and generosity of the Suffolk Foundation, we were able to procure with Steve's assistant about 146 of these kits. Okay. They are skin-toned. Annie is Annie, and I'll try not to grab her by the head or the neck here, but this is a simplistic kind of half mannequin here.
Right.
It works extremely well. I took one of these kits home, my wife and my 2 neighbors, and I had them learn how to do this kit. We went through the entire CD. Steve's absolutely correct. It takes about 20 minutes to get through the hands only.
Right.
We opted to do the whole CD. Took us right at an hour with demonstrations and popcorn.
Right.
But it did work well.
Right.
We provided one to y'all.
Right.
And I hope that you've had an opportunity to work with that, because it's an educational process. But one of the biggest things that this does for you is it helps eliminate your fear factor.
Right.
It used to be, and some people still will look at something and they'll look at a person, and that person can be dying right in front of you, and you will do nothing because I'm not certified, I'm not qualified, I've never done this before, I don't have a pocket mask, I don't have a face shield, I don't have a way to protect myself. Well, this takes this to a new level. This gives you the power of your hands.
Right.
It takes one person. One person makes a difference. I like this because this isn't something that I'm always going to do for somebody else. This is something that you can do for me. Mm-hmm. This is something that your babysitter can do for your children while you're at the movies or the dinner play. This is something that a child can do for the parent can do for the child or the grandparent. So it really rolls up the entire community. It takes all things that's good and puts them together. But it gives you a safe environment where you can practice and learn, and you can learn the right process.
Well, I know one of the big takeaways from the DVD that stuck with me was the fact of a lot of people's apprehension to do anything. I don't want to do it wrong. I'm going to make it worse. And Steve, maybe you could talk about the fact that really by doing any type of CPR with regard to this, you only have the potential to make it better.
Absolutely. The Heart Association, when developing this product and revising the standards, the emergency cardiovascular care standards developed by the AHA, are the global standards for CPR. And as we revised in 2010, we really looked at the reasons why people were not performing CPR,
right.
why bystanders were not responding, even if they had received training. And what we found were people were apprehensive about putting their mouth on another person. They were apprehensive about doing something wrong, or about possibly being liable for some sort of issue. So when we uncovered those three issues, we developed this product and really a campaign around education to empower people to learn and act, around dismissing those myths as well. When it comes to mouth, well, it turns out a person, when their heart stops, has about 12 minutes or so of oxygen left in their blood. And by simply performing hands-only CPR, we're able to circulate that oxygenated blood to the organs, specifically the brain and the heart, that need it the most.
Right.
The other thing about hands-only CPR is when you're compressing a person's chest down 2 inches, you're naturally forcing an air exchange, which keeps their blood oxygenated. So we found that hands-only CPR, so by removing mouth-to-mouth from our lay bystander response, we found that immediately more people would be responding and felt that people would have a lot more confidence.
Right.
We've also removed a step. It's as simple as, recognizing the emergency. Are you okay?
Right.
You call 911. You get an AED, and then compressions, 100 a minute to the beat of Staying Alive, until EMS arrives or the AED gets there. Those simple steps that I just described encompass the entirety of the lesson.
Right.
The idea of getting a chance to practice hands-on and then share that knowledge with family and friends is exactly what we're hoping to bring and benefit the community by having this event and hosting this event, thanks to the Suffolk Foundation.
Sure. Now, one other part I want to mention about the DVD is that it not only covers hands-only CPR, it also talks about the use of an AED, which is one thing that struck me because I'm thinking, well, you got to get the paddles and you got to yell clear and got to get it, but it's not that. It really, and that was maybe the most enlightening thing to me was how simple one of those devices is to use, but I think the simplicity is actually tied in what the acronym is for.
Absolutely. AED is an automated external defibrillator. So it's automated. It's intended, you turn it on, and it will talk you through every single step. It's safe to use, it's effective, and it will not shock someone who doesn't need it. In fact, on the pads themselves, the first step it will say is attach pads to person's chest, to victim's chest. And on those pads, it's actually a sticker. It's not any complicated paddles. It's a sticker with a picture of where it goes. It's simple and it's accessible and it's meant to be easily used. So if you have the opportunity to use one, use it. It will not shock a healthy person. I touched on something a moment ago that I wanted to kind of revisit because I talked about dispelling the myths of CPR. And The accessibility of mouth to mouth was one of the concerns. Another was the legal concerns that people have about responding to an emergency. In every state now, there's a Good Samaritan law that protects individuals without extensive training from responding to an emergency. So performing CPR falls under that. So it's a great opportunity. There's not really a reason, when we talk about those objections, we've removed the mouth-to-mouth component. You're legally protected. And now, of course, the goal is to make the knowledge available to everyone.
Correct.
So.
Now, Jim, day of the event, talk a little bit, I think, half-hour sessions that will involve breaking out the kits, distributing the kits, and people can get trained on how to use them, again, not only to educate themselves, but potentially to educate others. And, of course, I think that's what part of this program is about.
The nice thing about this is that it doesn't take a long time. Like all things, it does take practice, and it's a perishable skill. So this provides a capability to 143 people to show up on the morning of the 15th, and we're going to open at 8 o'clock, and we're going to close at 2 o'clock.
Okay.
But we will have half-hour sessions where people can come, and they can go through this tape with Steve, they can go through a demonstration, and then they'll walk out with the kit. Now, it doesn't stop there, because we only trained one person or 143 people that day. When that person takes that kit home in their community, to their scouts, to their association meetings, to their homeowners associations, to their church, faith-based organizations, to their workspace, they have an opportunity to extend that knowledge factor by a factor that's unknown. We like to say that if one person takes this and does 5 more sessions with people, we're going to get 730 people. But you don't have to stop at 5. This is one of those products that we can just keep on keeping on with it. When you're done with it, don't throw it away. You absolutely recycle this to someone you love, okay? Because that's what's going to make community safer. Getting this information out, sharing it, using it, being familiar, and building your individual confidence levels with this. The other associations or the partnerships that we're bringing together for this health fair, if you think about this in a systems engineering kind of approach, we're bringing EVMS on here, the Eastern Virginia Medical School. They're coming to look at diabetes kind of thing, A1C screening, blood pressure. They're looking at peripheral neuropathy testing. And they're going to do this free for anyone who's 18 years of age and older. That's one component of things that are affecting people's health in this community. Virginia 211, George Harden is coming, and George is going to be bringing some information that can help people that are having issues within the community for different problems. Maybe they need assistance, or maybe they need some outreach education. George is going to do that. We've got Angel Choate coming, and she's going to bring information on FAMOUS. FAMOUS is insurance for children and pregnant women. Okay? Tim is coming, and I can't pronounce Tim's name correctly because I have not met him yet, but he's coming from the Lyme Disease Association. And the Lyme Disease Association is one of those associations that people don't know about until you have to know about it. So I contacted the president, Pat Smith, and she sent me a little quick thing, and I'm going to read you just a little bit of this that I highlighted. This is an all-volunteer national nonprofit dedicated to Lyme disease education, prevention, research, and patient support. They offer a Lyme Aid for Kids assistant program for children without insurance coverage who have contracted Lyme disease. They've funded over 93 individual research grants and been published in 33 scientific journals. So we're not bringing just your average run-of-the-mill health fair. We're bringing in some really good speakers and such here. Lyme disease is the most prevalent vector-borne disease in the U.S. Here, I think about that little tick. And Tim and I were talking about ticks, and he says, it's getting season. And I told him the other day, after the snow melted, my wife walked through our yard and came in with 2 ticks on her leg. How they survived 8 inches of snow and all that cold, they're a pretty prevalent little critter. But these tick-borne illnesses will give you some of the indications of cardiac kind of problems also. We're also bringing Healthy People, Healthy Suffolk in here. Healthy People, Healthy Suffolk has been doing some outstanding work in the community. They're bringing education, they're bringing events, they're bringing a lot of interaction and a lot of partnerships. So people are starting to engage, they're getting smart, but they're getting healthy along the way. We're also bringing the American Diabetes Association, and if you follow what they're working on, they've got a Tour de Cure coming up April 26th, a 100-mile bike ride, but it's all about diabetes. And if you look at all these things and you look at how it all comes back to you and I as people, they all touch our health.
Yes.
They all touch our healthiness. They all touch the community. This is one more thing that we can work on to get integrated in the community to make us a smarter, safer community.
Well, it seems like it's very targeted for Suffolk, as
Yes.
far as with some of the organizations you're partnering with that are certainly Suffolk-based, but I mean, certain other organizations that reach from with outside as well. But to bring in, again, the knowledge and focusing on some of the situations and issues that are, affecting our community, and I think that's great that that opportunity is being provided. We just want to certainly encourage everyone to come out and participate on the event on the 15th. Steve, I want to go back to one thing that we talked about before we started taping, and that's the fact of maybe one of the simple misconceptions on when someone is having an issue, and again, that's related to the breathing.
Yep.
And we talked about that with, well, maybe some of the old thinking versus some of the new, and again, someone who might think, well, but I'm going to let you explain
Sure.
it because you did a great job
Absolutely. Thank
before,
you.
but I want to share that with everyone because it was another thing that really makes you think.
Absolutely. So when we talk about the evolution of the way that CPR has been developed, and in the last revision from those ECC guidelines that we talked about, historically, if anyone's learned CPR before, like you have, they may remember that ABC model, that airway, breathing, and circulation.
Right.
And we've evolved that with this last revision to take another approach, and it's actually CAB. And there's a reason behind that, and it actually comes from the misconception. So you, having learned CPR before,
Right.
used to go through a step where you'd listen for breath sounds. Well, one of the challenges of that is if you come upon someone in cardiac arrest whose heart is stopped or is just quivering, one of the signs and symptoms of that is called agonal breaths. And it's a short gasping breath, like that causes, unfortunately, many bystanders to respond and think, oh, they're trying to breathe. I don't have to do anything. But that's wrong. Agonal breathing is a sign of cardiac arrest, and that is a person in distress.
Right.
And so that's an important step. We also used to check for pulses. Well, how long are you going to check for a pulse on someone who doesn't have one
Right.
if you don't know and aren't a medical expert? So let's simplify that. Let's take that away. And so when we go back to those steps that we talked about, are you okay? When we're tapping and shouting, we're
Right.
trying to gather the responsiveness. We're getting 911 right away and
Correct.
sending someone for an AED.
Right.
And then we're starting compression. So we're doing that circulation step, right? We're doing a quick assessment, we're getting the experts on the way, and then we're responding immediately
Right.
with compression. So it's a little bit simpler and a little bit more direct,
Right.
but we found it makes a huge impact in the way people respond and people's willingness to act.
Indeed, indeed. And again, I think simple is the key word because you don't have to have the fear. Granted, the situation is going to be stressful enough, but
Absolutely.
the more education you have, the comfort level I think that you have, maybe practicing with one of the mannequins, having been taught, watching the DVD, picking up the tips and things to make you more comfortable that if you ever find yourself in that situation, that you really know what to do, and not only knowing what to do, but you act on it.
Absolutely. It's all about educating people, empowering them to act, and equipping them to be able to share that knowledge with other people.
Tim, we took the other day and sat down with some folks, and I asked them, have you ever done CPR? And it was across the board, no. And I asked them, I said, could you do CPR if you needed to? And one person, their response stuck real hard right in the front lobe here. Their response was, if I'm at my church, we have medical people and we have an AED. And I said, how many medical people? They said 3. So my next question was, do they all attend the same service? And what if one's on vacation, one's
Right,
at work,
yeah.
and the other one's at sick? Then you have what response capability?
Right.
I said, you still have an AED, but you can't touch it because you don't know how to do it.
Right.
Now, again, this goes back to the layout of Suffolk. You're not always going to have an AED
Right.
in your barn or in your garage or in your house, but you have your hands. You have a capability. You have a response mechanism that you can work on. One of the other things that we're going to pass out with all these kits is a CPR, AED, and basic first aid pocket reference guide. This is something that you can put in your pocket, you can read, you can get familiar with it. It's a low-cost investment for a significant return. One life saved, bought all these books.
Indeed.
Okay? It's not a factor. We're also going to take it a little further than that in that we went and bought 4 of these kits for each of the health department offices in the Western Tidewater Health District. So we have 2 adult Annies and we have 2 infant Annies that we're going to put at each of the health departments. So if you can't attend on the 15th,
Right.
and if you're not one of the people that walk away with one of these, you still have an option to come to the health department, to meet up with one of our CPR champions, and I'll provide you those names.
Right.
Then those people, you can check that out, you can take this kit home, you can work it, you can bring it back, and you still have a response capability and a training mechanism available in the communities.
So again, it's not just about the 15th, but there's certainly this project, this plan certainly can have some legs, if you will, out in that community, and making sure we're getting the information and the equipment out there to people so they can get the training and become a little more comfortable with everything, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. Now again, the date is the 15th of March.
Yes.
And Jim, if someone's watching this program, and certainly we've had up a couple of times the ways you can register as far as pre-register, and you'll be taking registration the day of as well, I believe?
We
Is
will.
that correct?
You
Okay.
can walk in and register. Now,
Okay.
the difference in that is that if you walk in at 8 o'clock and we already have a full classroom,
Right.
you're going to wait till the
That's
next session, which is 30 minutes down the road.
Got it.
But in that 30 minutes,
Right.
you can invest that with all the other community
right.
partners and make the most of it. Bring your family members. Bring your grandparents with you. Bring the church bus. It's okay. Come and participate. Be part of the solution set.
Right.
You don't know, and I don't know when this is going to present itself
That's right.
for us to be a solution. I'd be prepared. I'd like to know that everybody else is prepared. I'd like someone to save my life one day. I'm ready to save theirs.
Jim and Steve want to thank you both again for joining us for this edition of Healthy Living, and that will do it for this program. And as always, we leave you to your health.